Today we're going to create birch trees inspired by the Winter Trees book. I will show you two options of how to make your background depending if you have drawing materials or painting materials. What you'll need is a piece of paper, scissors, and either drawing or painting materials. You will also need something like a black marker or a big crayon. I suggest using an expo marker or a large crayon so that the marks are nice and big. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to fold our paper in half, hamburger style, so that way we can cut it in half. Once we cut it in half, one piece of paper is going to be for our trees that we're going to cut out, and one piece of paper will be our background. So once you cut it in half, put one piece of paper to the side, that will be the background, and have your first piece of paper in front of you for our trees. Your paper should be landscape or wide. And what you're going to do is we're going to draw some vertical lines that go from the top to the bottom. They don't have to be perfectly straight because trees are not perfectly straight, but they should be somewhat parallel and not crossing. You should have about 6 to 8 lines. So I need one more. And it's okay if they don't take up the whole page. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to draw horizontal lines down each line. Notice how my horizontal lines kind of stack on top of each other. They are not touching the next line, but go from kind of long to kind of short, all centered on that other line that I drew vertically. For the next one, this is where you have to be careful. You don't want to touch these other lines. Do a stack of other horizontal lines that vary in length, long and short, but don't touch the left stack or that right line. It's okay if one or two touch, but you want that space in between your lines. Keep going with all of your 6 to 8 lines, creating this kind of texture with these horizontal stacked lines. All right, once you have them done, you need your scissors. You're going to cut that original vertical line on both ends first. So right up the middle of your horizontal texture, cut off that edge, put it aside, you don't need it anymore. Go to your very right line that is vertical, go up the middle, put that to the side. You will continue to cut your original vertical line, cutting these stacks in half. It should look kind of like that. And once again, it's okay if it's not a perfectly straight line because trees are not perfectly straight. What we're creating are the trunks of the birch tree with those signature line markings on the side. The tree still looks kind of white because the middle is white, but these black lines create that texture of a birch tree. There you go. So now we have our trunks. I'm going to show you two different options for making backgrounds. At the end, I'll show you how you can arrange your birch trees, but they basically need to go from top to bottom. The only rule for your background is that you either need to have a warm color background or a cool color background. I will show you an example of a drawing of a warm, and I'll show you an example of a painting of a cool. But if you want to paint a warm or draw a cool, that is okay too. But remember, the one rule we have is that it is either warm or cool, but not both. So for your background, and I'm going to put a little diagram up to remind you what colors are considered warm and what colors are considered cool. If you need to pause and pick out those colors, that is fine. But I'm first going to show you a warm color background and kind of tell you how I plan to do it. The important thing is that choosing colors that kind of blend well by keeping in one type of color group will help our trees stand out more and keep our colors nice and bright. You also want to make our tree stand out more by, especially if you're drawing, to color vertically, since our trees have horizontal lines on them. This will create some more emphasis. So I'm going to color vertically up and down. Make sure your paper is landscape, which means wide. And I'm going to do it in sections. You can decide if you want to do like the top red and then it fades to orange and then yellow, or if you want to do just kind of patchwork sections like me, that is up to you. Just remember our one rule: keep in the same color family, which is either warm or cool. I'll show you the other background in just a second, but the last thing you're going to do is you're going to arrange your birch tree trunks. And think of this as if you couldn't see the bottom of them or the top, so you're just seeing the tree trunk itself. If you want to, you can take one tree trunk and cut it up into smaller sections to create little branches. I like to stick my branches behind the tall tree trunks, so that way it looks like it's coming out of it and you don't see that edge. But it's up to you how you arrange them, as long as they go from top to bottom. If you have paint, you could do a technique with salt to make it kind of look like snowflakes in the background, since it is a winter tree. I'm going to show you how to do that with cool colors, but I'm using gouache, which is kind of like watercolor, and I need some salt. So the key to making the salt effect work is to make your paper and make your paint really wet. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to paint my whole paper just with water. I'm using a really big brush. If you don't have a really big brush, you could also take a paper towel and make it damp and then wipe your paper with the paper towel to make the paper kind of wet, but not soaking wet. After I have made my paper wet, I'm going to put cool colors on my paper. See how it's kind of moving around because of the water? That means it's really wet, which is great. And I have to work kind of quickly so that my water and watercolors don't dry up. You need them very, very wet so that the salt works. I'm also dipping my brush a lot in the water to make sure that my watercolor stays very wet too. Also notice I'm not mixing all my colors, but I am letting them touch each other. Now that I work quickly, I'm going to put some salt on my hand and I'm going to sprinkle it, especially in those kind of wetter areas. It looks kind of dark right now, but let me show you a little time lapse. What happens is that the salt particles will suck up the paint, leaving kind of a burst or snowflake looking pattern. So look how the dark goes away and all of a sudden there's a white spot. After your painting is dry, remember you're going to arrange your trees. Once again, top to bottom, so it looks like we're only looking at the middle. You can decide how many trees looks good. You can decide if you want different ones to have branches. Make sure you take time to arrange your composition before you glue it down to make sure you feel that there's balance and unity. Hope you enjoyed our birch tree project for today, and looking forward to seeing either your warm or cool colored background birch tree composition.